have you ever wondered if you could be offering a faster, less buggy application experience?
Do it if you work through Maui.
Yeah. And now if you want to make a Maui app that targets Windows and Mac desktop in that list as well. But I mean, if you want to do that, you're not going to be doing WinUI specific stuff. Maybe you are. I don't know. I know that the project looks like one solution, and then you have a platforms folder, and underneath each platform, and you have platform specific stuff in there. But I don't know how WinUI kind of edges itself into a Maui app, if it does, or if it's just outdated now. I don't know.
So I think that's going to follow the same pattern that we've seen now. Like, when UI is just, .NET Maui is just going to map to WinUI things.
Okay.
But yeah, that's an interesting thing that you mentioned there. That's also going to be single project. So now if you look at a Xamarin Forms application, you have the shared library where you want to have all your code. But for some things, if we come back to, I need to know something about the platform, there are features that are very specific to iOS. Name, for instance, Apple Pay. That is, it will need custom code for your native platform. So you will come back at some point if you have a little bit of a bigger application or enterprise application, you're going to have to write something that is specific to a platform at some point. With the single project, that's going to be very interesting because, like I said, you have the shared project right now, and then you basically have kind of like the bootstrap projects for all the heads for Android, iOS, UWP. As to your question for Linux, I don't think that is something that is targeted primarily.
I don't think so either.
But the interesting thing is Xamarin Forms has a couple of these platforms that are contributed by the community, like WPF, GDK, so running on Linux, Tizen, which is very cool. The Samsung Tizen team, they're very active themselves with like following up PRs for all the bigger features. But I think the primary focus is, like I said, iOS, Android, UWP, and macOS. So that's going to be really cool. But it's now going to be a single project. So like you said, you're going to have all the resources, and that's kind of the big thing in this story, I think. So your images, because if you've built an app, then you know that you have to supply images in all kinds of shapes and forms, and then duplicate that ×3 for all the resolutions and ×2 for Android and iOS, and well, it's a mess. Now they have the solution where you can do it from a single project. You just add your images, and I think it will also even figure out all the resolutions and things that it has to generate. So it will do all that for you. Like your fonts, you will just have a single font file in your application. And because of the multi-targeting, it will just figure out whenever you say, hey, I want to run my iOS app, it will take all the bits that's needed for iOS and run that, and for Android, et cetera, et cetera. You will just have that one project which holds all your code.
It's pretty cool.
Right.
I got to say, even this far into the conversation, I can't believe I haven't brought it up sooner, but I have a history with Xamarin Forms. I've been doing it ever since the first version came out, and have even done workshops in Xamarin Forms, hands-on workshops and at Dev Intersection and other places. And every time that I would, okay, it's time to spin up. It's been about 6 months. I'll spin up Visual Studio and try to build the Xamarin Forms app. For a while there, for a while it was so painful.
Yep.
It was like that when we did a workshop, the first half of the day was dedicated to getting everybody working to Hello World.
Yeah.
And the second half, once we got there, it was smooth sailing. So I got to say, the experience, the out-of-the-box experience of Xamarin today is awesome. Everything just works. And you guys, I don't know if you personally have, but Microsoft has done a great job of making sure that out-of-the-box Hello World experience is fantastic.
Yeah.
And, a lot of moving parts, man. Xamarin is probably the biggest abstraction network tree in the whole of .NET. I mean, there's a lot of dependencies, right? And so
So I'll say thank you on behalf of Microsoft. Well, that's maybe a bit big, but at least the Xamarin Forms team. But yeah, and that's something that they've really tried to do, because I think if you've ever tried it in the early days, then this is definitely the biggest pain that you had. Every update of Xamarin Forms would cause issues. You would have, and again, you would come back to, I don't want to be that platform expert. I want that abstraction, but you would have to dig through all kinds of Java and Objective-C scary things. And whenever you got there, then it was smooth sailing, like you said. But yeah, that has been so much better. I think the cutoff point was kind of version 3.5 or something, where it got better with each release, and now we're up to 5. And also that's, I think, the most complete one, with a lot of new controls added that a lot of people were waiting for. So yeah, that was definitely something that was a big pain point, but that's now solved.
So listeners, get over your old pain and pull it out and just try it again, because it's good. It's really good, a great experience now.
I was thinking about, because it's all open source, there's no question that you could make a Linux desktop version of .NET MAUI. Not that Microsoft's committed to it at all, but there's no reason they couldn't. The question is which desktop, like pick one.
Yeah.
There's a bunch, right? KDE, GNOME, there's a few.
Let's face it, people don't use Linux for the UI, They use
for the desktop side. And yet there are a bunch of them. If somebody's out there, if they needed that, it's totally doable.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole point of the .NET MAUI abstraction is that it should be reasonable to have a common set of interfaces that, if you're going to Windows, it's going to call through WinUI. But if you're going to go into Mac OS, there'll be a different layer there, and there could be a different layer for KDE.
Yeah,
it's interesting. I'm just fascinated with this idea of kind of bringing back the client.
Mm-hmm.
We've been living in a world where the client, especially for corporate apps, has been the browser.
Yep. And still is the default,
Yeah. And does it make sense if we have this unified environment to have a native client deployed?
Well, that's of course another route that's going to be very interesting, because there's also been, since a little while, how do they call it? Blazor mobile bindings, I think.
Yep.
Where you can write Blazor, so kind of like in an Electron way, where you can write Blazor apps, which is then wrapped inside, all the things Xamarin Forms, basically, because it's very close to that space, or .NET MAUI then. And that's absolute magic. I don't even know how they pull that off, because it also has integration with the native bit. So you will have a Blazor web view is what they call it, I think. That's where you write all your Blazor stuff. But you can just as easily reference some element outside of that web view, and it will increment all the values there, and that's just pure magic. So that could be another route.
And so that's for Xamarin Forms now, but they're taking that whole idea and putting it into MAUI. So if you want to build a MAUI app, you can either use for the UI layer, you can use the new MAUI XAML. I don't know, it's called something else, right? I don't know. Or is there
an official name? It's just XAML, I think.
Mammal. Let's call it Mammal. Right? No. So you can either use that, or you could use the Blazor model. The Blazor component model is wonderful, especially for binding.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole bunch of stuff that you don't have to call property changed all the time. The changes bubble up nicely. It's really going to be very interesting once I get my hands on that. I can't wait.
And it's interesting that you noticed mentioned the property change, because that's also something I think that was another big point why they wanted to change the architecture, because it's now very much tied to the MVVM pattern, which is, kind of how Microsoft does its things. But there's a big call from the other side, like the Flutters of this world, or the likes of that, with MVU. And I think the purists will not think it's MVU, but you have an initiative called Comet, which is, does it more like composing your UI in code. You could do that today, but it's I don't really like it. And so, the new architecture kind of not ties it so much to MVVM or some kind of pattern. It can be MVU, it can be MVView, it can be some kind of fluent C# syntax, whatever you want. And also, it opens up the door to more kind of other backing mechanisms, like, not just draw it by native, but maybe also get some drawing library in there, like Skia#, and even draw all the controls, which is not something before people go out and say, like, this is awesome. That's not something that is on the roadmap right now, at least. Again, might be something that's picked up by the community. But this new architecture definitely opens up this whole new world of these kinds of things.
There's also another one, and I don't know, did you mention it? It's and I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but it's a C# UI. Essentially, you define all of the code with C#. Did you mention that?
I didn't mention it, but that was what I was hinting on with the fluent CUI syntax. Yeah.
Wow, cool stuff. Anything else that we need to know?
No, go check it out. Like you already said, like it's the most stable and complete version right now. So that's actually, maybe let's end on that one. Another
go do
story.
It now.
Yes, go do it now, definitely. Because another question that we get, like, together linked with, like, is Xamarin Forms dead? Should I now invest in Xamarin Forms, learning that while .NET MAUI is underway?
Yeah.
Yes, definitely go do that, please, because I hope, if you've listened to the rest of the show, that definitely there will be changes between Xamarin Forms and .NET MAUI, but 80-90% of all the things that you will learn today with Xamarin Forms is applicable to .NET MAUI. So that will not be an investment.
I guess my question would be, given I only have so many learning hours, am I better off learning Xamarin Forms 5 or MAUI Preview?
Ooh, that's interesting. That's interesting.
I do Xamarin Forms.
We have this preview bits, and it's not like they're open source. You can ship them if you want.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so, right? It's not like they need a go live license or anything.
Yeah, no, and I think this question kind of depends on where you see yourself as a developer. If you are starting out with this stuff and you want a full solution and see all how the bits back together and how it all works, I think you should go with Xamarin Forms, because that is a complete solution. That is a solution that works. You can safely assume that, which is going to sound a bit harsh, but that it's you and not them whenever something goes wrong.
Right.
And with the preview bits, then it could be anything, right? So if you know what you're doing,
well, the main thing is it could be you
or them,
and most likely both.
Yeah, exactly. So, but and if you know what you're doing, if you are a seasoned Xamarin developer, well, then you don't need to learn it. But if you're like more of a seasoned developer, then definitely go check out .NET MAUI and you can follow me.
So if I'm going to summarize what you just said there, Gerald, it's you will be less frustrated as a learner with Xamarin Forms 5 than you will be with the Preview 2 of .NET 6 with MAUI.
At this point in time, I would think so, yes.
Yeah. I mean, this will change presumably by November, if not sooner. But at this particular moment, it still makes sense to put your time into Xamarin Forms.
Yeah. So I think everything has been etched out in .NET 6 Preview 2, .NET MAUI Preview 2. But a lot is still missing because they're now just making headway with implementing all the things. And I think they're planning to release a preview each month. So from now until November, that's going to be 6 or 7 more. So each one will bring you more and will make you happier.
Yeah.
But
But if you actually needed to ship an app, I remember us building apps for Humanitarian Toolbox on the betas of .NET Core, and every build, and I think there was 8 of them, broke everything. It just took time. It wasn't dramatic breaks, but it's like you have to stop what you're doing, can't build any features while you go through and figure out what has changed and correct it all. And you would go through that same experience with the preview versions of .NET 6. Like, it's not going to be easy. You'll spend as much time dealing with the next preview as you will building.
Yes, and that can be very valuable. And if you do that, please provide feedback back to the team, like, hey, this is happening. This is my vision, how you can make it better. But you will have to have that mindset that I'm building with preview bits, so things are going to break.
Yeah. Communicate with the powers that be about this is why it's taking a while. Right. Like, you cannot create a delivery date on preview bits. You don't know what's going to happen.
Well, on that, I think we'll wrap it up. Gerald, it's been great talking to you. And man, we can come back and talk about anything you want anytime. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure being here. And I'll be happy to be back anytime. So let me know.
All right. And we'll catch you next time on .NET Rocks. Welcome back to .NET Rocks. This is Carl Franklin.
And this is Richard Campbell.
And we are in our respective spots in the world.
Yeah, in our respective corners of the land of, gradual vaccination.
Yeah.
The end of all this.
We just recorded last week's show. What was it, yesterday?
Mm-hmm.
So nothing really has happened all that much in the meantime.
The old dog has been having seizures, as I think I've told you. Well, yeah. We got him on new meds at the beginning of the year, and so we went 14 weeks without a seizure. And that's administering medicine to him every 8 hours.
Wow,
which is a thing. Once you're maintaining a chart for your dog, but it's sort of the deal, right? He's 16 years old. And so, but there's this particular medicine that's called Keppra, for anybody who cares, does have an efficacy fall off after about 3 to 4 months. And so we're in that catchment now. So now he's starting to have seizures again, although they've been a little more mild. And so we're trying to figure out what to do next.
He's an old dog.
He is an old dog. This is all a one-way path. And he can't do stairs anymore.
Yeah.
He'll go down them, but he can't come up them. So the reality, of course, is that I carry my dog 3 or 4 times a day now. Every time he wants to go upstairs or something. So,
yeah,
I'm grateful for being home through this.
Right.
You think about what our lives are like in the before times. I have to wonder if at some point She Who Must Be Obeyed wouldn't have said, like, you need to come home and take care of your dog. But the good news is I've been here and we've been able to do all this. So I don't know how much longer you get. This is because his body's still functioning pretty well. His brain is shorting out.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the deal. So,
does he have any more interest in bears?
He would if he could see them. And I should show you this great video clip because his eyesight's very limited and so forth. And there was a squirrel on the deck. Now you have to understand how great an offense we're actually talking about.
That's pretty big.
Like for many, many years, there were not squirrels within 100 yards.
Yeah.
They were terrified, right? This is an insane little creature that lives with me, right? So this squirrel is on the deck.
And he's prancing around like,
he's doing his thing. And the dog comes up the ramp because the dog can't do stairs, right? So I built a little ramp out the back. He's coming up the ramp. And so the squirrel just sort of slips off the deck. The dog's going along and he knows there's something up, but he doesn't know what it is.
Yeah.
And he gets to the middle of the deck and he stands there for a minute and he just lets out one bark. And then he goes inside for
It's an insurance bark.
Well, it's just to let you know. It's like, I know you're out there, you darn whippersnappers, and I don't like it.
I don't know what you are, but woof.
And now I'm going to go get some Metamucil. And then he went. And I'm grateful that he can't see anymore because he would try and he would hurt himself.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
he knows
elderly.
that much.
Yeah.
Well, let's get things rolling here with a little thing we call Better Know a Framework.
Awesome.
All
right, man. What do you got?
So what do investors read? They read the Wall Street Journal, right?
Okay.
People who want to keep up with the news, they read the New York Times, they read the Washington Post, they read their newspaper, they go online, they read stuff, and I'm talking about like when we're busy people, right? We're all developers here. We have a limited amount of downtime where we think, I think I'd like to read something new,
right?
Just find something new. So for us, there's Powell Borker's Awesome Repos.
What?
A repo of repos. A curated list of categorized repos out there in the world that is extremely vast. You can't get through all of these things in your lifetime.
This is a lot of repos, is what you're
It's
saying.
a lot of repos. So you have an index, and now let's just the A's are API and awesome. So, so just go to public APIs, a collective list of free APIs. This is just the list. Now, there's an index by category.
Okay.
And there's about 20 or so in there.
Just the curation effort for all of this.
I would bring your attention to dog facts. Random dog facts API. An API that returns random dog facts with usage and an example.
Okay, so not every API in here is critical to the survival of the
This is what I'm saying. This is summer reading for geeks. Fact: many foot disorders in dogs are caused by long toenails.
This is true.
I just picked one. There are thousands. Thousands of repos to pique your interest. You know, if you're passing some time, you know, you got to sit on the toilet for a while and you don't want to read blogs and Twitter. Just jump in here, man, and life will be happy.
That's funny. I love it. That's
Isn't that
great,
cool?
Too. Yeah. That's great find.
Thanks to Brian McKay for finding this one for me.
Yeah. It's always can count on the app V-Nexters.
Yep. So, who's talking to us today, Richard?
Grab the comment top for show 1332, the one we did back in August of 2016 with one Paul Stovall. Maybe you've heard of him. We were talking about multi-tenancy apps and also, you know, the role that Octopus Deploy could really play in making your life easier when you're trying to deal with multi-tenancy. It's a hard problem, right? No two ways about it. Got a lot of great comments on that show. And this one is from Miles, and he gave it a delete a few years ago, where he says, "Thanks for the great episode. Multi-tenancy is not a topic discussed in its own right. And seeing this is episode 1332, the first time that happened on .NET Rocks. Well, you know, back in 2005, multi-tenancy wasn't a thing."
Yeah, right.
Even worse, it's typically seen as a ramp-up phase issue. Once it's dealt with, it's considered done. I think this is a shame, really, because it's one of those topics where technical architecture concerns, economic business needs, and user experience meet in a way that us geeks can actually relate to. Yeah. You know what the problem with multi-tenancy is? Is that it sounds like a simple problem. Like it's a total bike shed problem. Everybody thinks a bike shed is simple and they all have an opinion about it. But until you really get into building one, you don't really know. And real multi-tenancy is really quite hard.
Yeah.
Miles goes on to say, "My company is currently getting started on the move to the cloud." Admittedly, this is 5 years ago. Okay. So we're moved to the cloud. It was still a conversation you had. After we finally realized in our current already underperforming setup simply wasn't going to scale to our needs. And trust me, our customers don't see this as a, quote, future problem, which is an opaque way of saying, I think all of his customers are already complaining. We've even recognized that our current multi-tenancy solution is an important part of the problem. Still, after today, I start to understand all the things we have not addressed yet. In our current case, things get complicated by the fact that some of our customers share huge amounts of streaming data with each other, and they expect to see it in real time. Separating them completely from the database on upward has not produced the desired effects. And as a Scrum Master, I wonder whether we are actually learning the right lessons from our past mistakes. So please bring this up the next time you have Udi Dehan on, or dare I even wish Eric Evans, interesting, back on the show. It may seem a bit specific, but in my experience, it is these questions and the following decisions that make the difference between a good-looking architecture diagram and an actual, and maybe even long-term, value recognized by the users.
Yeah.
We haven't had Udi on in a long time either, man.
We
it's
haven't.
an interesting thought. So, and admittedly, 5 years is a long time to wait, Miles. I apologize for that. But I also appreciate, I think your company's in good hands, man. I read your message and think Miles is thinking about the hard problems. that he's thinking about what's the value to the user rather than the elegant architecture.
Right.
Are we addressing the issues of multi-tenancy that actually help us build a better customer experience? Like, that is the way to think about it. I'm hoping that 5 years on, you got this solved, and all is well. Yeah. So thank you so much for your comment. A copy of Music to Code By is on its way to you. And if you'd like a copy of Music to Code By, write a comment on the website at .netrocks.com or on the Facebooks, because we publish every show there. And if you comment there and I read it on the show, we'll send you a copy of Music to Code By.
And definitely follow us on Twitter. I'm at Carl Franklin. He's at Richard Campbell. Send us a tweet. And make sure you clip those dogs' toenails.
Yeah, especially those dew claws, the ones that'll actually grow up into their pads, which is really bad.
Yeah. And I learned
You know what I got for Zach now?
Yeah.
Well, I've got toe grips.
Okay.
You want to know what toe grips are?
Sounds like a Klingon lunch special.
Nice. Dr. Busby's toe grips. They are little bits of rubber that fit over the nails to give his paws more traction on the hardwood and linoleum floors.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool.
So he doesn't slip out quite as much, which, wasn't a problem when he was younger, but when he's old, that's really hard on him. So
you guys don't dress him up in costumes and stuff. And
he's not that kind of dog.
You don't put a mask on him.
There was periods where every so often she would decide he needed a raincoat until I actually I walked him in the rain for an hour till my coat had failed and I was wet, and he was still not wet. Right? He's from Scotland, comes with a built-in raincoat.
That's right. Yeah. I
actually walked him until his coat failed. It was over 2 hours in the rain. And it was only his head that failed first. Suddenly you could see bits of his scalp. And then he wanted to go home because his head was getting cold. Yeah. But up till then, the water just rolls off him.
All right. Well, enough about DAGs. Let's bring on our guest. Paul Stovall is the founder and CEO of Octopus Deploy, a DevOps automation software company, which he started as a nights and weekends spare time project in 2011, and now employs 100+ people. And prior to Octopus, Paul was an independent contractor and consultant. He lives in Brisbane, Australia. Welcome back, Paul.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
This hobby you have has gotten way out of hand.
Yeah.
Are congratulations in order, friend? I've read the press releases and the story here. What have you done?
Yeah, we had a big announcement this last week. Octopus has raised $172 million from Insight Partners, which is one of the largest US venture capital firms. If you're .NET users might be familiar with Pluralsight, Xamarin, a bunch of other companies that Insight had helped on their scaling journey. And that's what we announced this week.
Congratulations.
Wow. And I appreciate that you mentioned both Pluralsight and Xamarin. Pluralsight having gone public with a substantial IPO offering, and Xamarin having been acquired by Microsoft for an unknown, probably pretty healthy size number.
Yeah.
Is that what's the goal? Is it one of those? Do you want to go public, or do you want to be bought, or why the expansion?
Oh, the hard questions. No, look, we've been bootstrapped and profitable and running a growing business for the last coming up on 10 years now, I guess. And quite happy with how everything is going. As we started to think about what the next decade of Octopus looks like, that was sort of where we sort of led to the decision to bring on an investor who kind of understood what all the things that we're going to hit across this next decade, the things we've got to learn, the things we've got to get good at.
Right.
So that's as far as being a public company or something. That feels like a lot of paperwork. That's a long way down the track. There's a lot of things.
Right.
It would be our ambition, I think, to build a business that's good enough to warrant investment from anybody. That would mean that we've built something that's very high quality and a very well-run business. But there's a lot of milestones to hit before that.
What's interesting is you did bootstrap. You're not a startup. You were 10 years into this journey already. You have built up the company quite successfully. I mean, over 100 people. You're a long way along there.
Yeah.
And I'm not even going to. We can go into the question of why take investment now, but do you feel like you should have taken investment earlier too? Did bootstrapping slow you down in growth?
Possibly. So I think generally when you think about starting a startup, there is this idea that you've got to go and put a pitch deck together and start pitching to VCs and sort of ask for money, right? Like building a startup is this sort of game, and if you can convince someone to give you some money, you can kind of start building it. And then, but very quickly that puts companies on a path of needing to kind of go through that process again every 18 months or so, right? Because as soon as you take on that investor, you're sort of going to be put on a path where you've got to build a business that's not necessarily profitable, but really focused on growth. And so you're going to be spending beyond your means as a company, which means in 18 months you'll run out of money and be back to doing the same thing. And the failure rate of companies doing that is really high. Like between a Series A to a Series B to a Series C, there's like an 80% fall off rate at each one of those milestones. So there's a very high chance that a company that's raised a really great Series C isn't in business to raise the Series D, or isn't able to make that funding round. But that's, I guess, the game you're playing there is you're saying, we've got a business that's going to be worth billions of dollars, and we're going to try and build it really quickly, as fast as possible. Maybe because there's a lot of competition in the space, or it's a space that's growing really fast, and it's a bit of a land grab. And so we're going to aim for this sort of 1 in 1,000 outcome. But if we make it, we'll build a really valuable business. That wasn't our goal. Like when I was 18, I used to listen to .NET Rocks as I was studying for final years of high school. And, for me as a kid growing up in a country town, the idea that you could build a life making software and selling it was a really enticing thing. Software naturally is not a capital intensive business. You need a laptop, you need an internet connection.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily need to raise a lot of money. You're not building a factory or ordering hardware components.
I mean, this is why the whole .com boom, like Netscape was the one that sort of showed that the first time. It's like, hey, here's a browser for the internet over the web, and we distribute it over the web, and you get updates over the web.
Right.
Like we have a minimal operating infrastructure now.
Yeah. Yeah, like naturally, these businesses don't lend themselves to being capital intensive. And so that was the approach we took. So 2011, it was a spare time project. I was blogging about it. A lot of people listening to the show might have even tried those early versions of Octopus. It was purple. My sister designed the logo for it, but it worked and it solved people's problems. And then in 2012, we started selling licenses to it. And then from that point on, we were profitable, and we just plugged away at that. In 2014, started hiring some people, and then just kind of grew and grew and grew from there. And, we sort of like to say, every dollar that we've used to build Octopus today has come from our customers, which is really great. We've never had to put a pitch deck together. We've never had to go to investors and say, hey, we want to keep playing the game. Can you please give us some money? We go to our customers and we say, hey, I hope you still find our product valuable. And as long as they do, we get to be in business forever because we're profitable. We have that optionality. And I think it also, I guess, for where we are in our personal lives, it also then meant we could go as fast or as slowly as we liked. So we perhaps could have grown quicker if we'd raised a lot of funding in the early days, but I'd probably be a lot more tired. We might have done a lot of things wrong. That growth can be quite damaging too.
Well, and yeah, there's no guarantees on any of those things. Like I sort of look at WhatsApp as your sort of ideal case of like the modern Silicon Valley kind of company, because there's definitely been different stages. Like I mentioned Netscape as the beginning of that in the 90s, but that period is long since over. When I look at the modern age, it's like WhatsApp was founded in 2009 on the idea of doing secure messaging. They get funding out of Yahoo right out of the bat, right? And build a small team to sort of write it right. And the entire duration of that company is 5 years. They're gone by 2014. They're bought for a 3 comma number by Facebook, right? Like it's the ultimate win, but it's also the ultimate unicorn, right? Like these don't exist. Yeah. This should not be your business plan.
No, and these are the stories, they get attention because of the large sums involved, but often what's sort of not covered is all the sort of failing companies that happen along the way.
Oh yeah, the vast majority of cases, like the 99.9% that don't do a WhatsApp, yeah.
And I think you if you had the choice, let's say I want to build a business that is worth $10 million. It maybe makes $1 million in revenue a year, but it's profitable and I can run it for as long as I like, and my customers are going to love what we're doing, and it's going to be fun to come to work each day. And I have from year to year, I have a 90% chance of being in business, let's say, versus, I'm going to kind of aim for this $1 billion outcome, but there's really low chance of still being a business, and a really low chance of success. I mean, that's the venture capital model is built around that, right? We're going to fund a lot of companies, many of which will fail, but some will succeed with these really outlandish returns. But your personal risk,
but it's also why they demand such an outlandish return, right? You can have a high failure rate if you have a 10% chance of having this extraordinary return that pays for a lot of failure.
Yeah.
I just question, having been involved in this aspect of the business in one form or another for quite some time, whether you're not propagating failure too, right? That you increase the risk of failure by pressing these organizations so hard for these kinds of returns, or make them sick.
Yeah.
Right? Make them do things that are unhealthy to their customers and their employees.
Yeah, I think if you, as a founder, there's a really important decision you have to make. You have to figure out, are you building the type of business like a web browser, like a secure messaging system, where getting mass adoption as quickly as possible is the most important thing? Like, what the product does is perhaps kind of secondary to how quickly you can kind of get it into the hands of every person around the world.
Well, and only certain products does that make sense for, right?
Yeah, a lot less than we probably naturally think. And if that is what you're doing, if you are building a WhatsApp, you need to do that. You need to do that really quickly. You need to raise as much funding as possible. And whoever wins is going to be whoever can raise the most and spend the most on sales and marketing.
Right. That race land grab.
Yeah, there's a lot of businesses, especially businesses that kind of touch on developer tooling, where I don't think that's necessarily true. But because I guess the venture capital industry as a whole has this sort of goal of, it's in their interest for people to think, if I need to start a business, I need to raise capital, I need to take on an investor. That's sort of become the default. And I don't think it necessarily should be. I think the default for a lot of businesses should be, we'll sort of fund it with customer revenue as much as possible.
Well, and the other side of this is, should you need funding for some reason, the more you validate your business model by making something that customers want, that they're willing to pay for, the better off you are ultimately as the owner to say, I have a value and a growth path. Really the question is, why would inserting more money into this be beneficial?
Yeah.
Which really leads us to the main question, Paul. After all 10 years of success, what have you done?
Why?
Like you've taken on that's a lot of money, friend.
Yeah.
Why did you feel that you needed it? I mean, you must have a plan for it.
We have a plan for it, but the company doesn't need the money actually. So the way that we thought about it for a long time was about sort of from 2016, 2017, we started to get noticed by a lot of venture firms, even though we weren't actively doing anything to kind of gather that attention. We were barely struggling to figure out how to market to our customers, let alone investors. And we've never put a pitch deck together. We've never gone to investors and said, hey, we want to raise some funding. But we got noticed, and a lot of firms would start to reach out. And our typical answer would be, hey, we can fund that growth. We're growing really well. We're happy with where things are at. When we look at benchmarks, we're doing incredibly well. And we can fund our growth from our own balance sheet. Thank you. We don't need outside capital. And that was the standard answer we gave. And a lot of firms, we'd still sort of build relationships with them though, and get to know them a bit, just because we figure at some point the growth path that we've been on, sort of if that continues for the next few years, we do start to become a very large company. And as doing that, there's just so many challenges that you hit along the way that bringing on an institutional investor might be a sensible thing to do. But you want to do it on your own terms. You want to do it when you're ready. And the main consideration I had is, I wanted to make sure that if we did bring on an investor, firstly, the timelines for the investment that made it a sensible investment for them. It wouldn't be pushing for growth that was beyond what we thought was reasonable and right. But really, so I guess where we got to was the end of 2020. We were thinking a lot about 2021 and forward. And, you can build a business a really long way just by building a really good product and being really responsive to customers. That's the thing that we've learned. You don't have to be amazing at marketing. You don't have to be amazing at sales. It would be really great. We'd love to be better at those things. But we've gotten this far just sort of on really good product, really good customer support.
Well, and part of that has been great word of mouth. Like, I know you don't think of yourself as a sales and marketing org, but people know what Octopus Deploy is, even if they don't use it. So somewhere along the line, the story of your product has gotten really coherent. Any marketing person would be proud of that.
I'm glad it appears that way on the outside.
Oh, we know that you. I know you're a duck, man. The top looks great, but the feet are moving.
That's right. So one of the interesting things that have happened to us over the years is, we've as we've expanded within organizations, our customers become not just our best marketers in terms of word of mouth, but they become our best salespeople. So they adopt Octopus, they have success with it. It might be a team lead that brings it onto a single team within an organization. And then they start telling their boss about it, and it kind of goes up through the organization to the point where they decide we're standardizing Octopus for all of our deployments enterprise-wide. And we find ourselves working with these really large enterprises going through, legal negotiations and all the kind of stuff that comes with enterprise sales without actually having an enterprise sales team in the first place. And in many ways kind of letting those customers down. So this poor developer who is a huge champion of Octopus and really wants to see more of it within their company because they're experiencing, faster deployments, things more reliable, all that kind of stuff, sort of find themselves without anyone from Octopus able to join that call and help them convince their boss why they should use more of it. And so that kind of points to, for us as a company, not just being great at product, not just being great at sort of customer service, but being really good at engaging in the sort of enterprise sales go-to-market motion. And so coming back to the question, this is sort of where we started to think a lot about, okay, if we really wanted to get good at this and not keep figuring things out for ourselves and making the same mistakes that a lot of companies make, maybe it does make sense to bring on an investor that knows how to do that. And so it wasn't the point that the company got to a point where it needed the money. It's still very profitable. It's still able to fund its own growth from its own balance sheet. But it really did feel like time to bring on an investor that had that experience. Because, my background is product and technology.
Sure. So bringing a different skill set to the table, which is certainly advice I've given when talking about taking investment, is it's not, money is money and there's money in a lot of places. The real distinction between one set of money and another set of money is the skills that come with that money. Nobody's going to make a substantial investment in your company if they don't also get a say in your company.
Yeah.
And you want that say to be different than you, knowledgeable about things you're not knowledgeable about.
Yeah, you want a board that you can go to with a hairy problem and get really informed help on how to navigate and solve that problem. A bunch of random people, or sometimes you'll see a company raises a round of funding, but it's made up of this mishmash of like 6 or 7 different investors, none of which really have that skin in the game to really help the company with the issues it has. That's not the path we wanted to go down. We wanted to bring on an investor that would be genuinely helpful.
Well, and you can't argue with the credibility of Insight, right? Like they are kind of a very marquee late stage investment organization. Like,
yeah, this is the stuff they do well, and I think especially when it comes to sort of North American enterprise sales and marketing, they kind of bring a lot of experience there. What we liked about them and what made them a good fit, though, was also there's actually really good values alignment. Like, they like that we're profitable. They like that we're not going to be on this 18-month, needing to raise another round and another round in pursuit of sort of unsustainable inorganic growth. They like that it's a real, our product is free to start with and it'll stay free. And then at some point.
Yeah, and that's a sustainable model, right? That's the modern software model these days.
Yeah.
And Paul, I'm going to interrupt for one moment for this very important message.
This portion of .NET Rocks is brought to you by our friends at Oracle. When you're starting up in the tech world, having all your options open makes a big difference. So why let a cloud partner limit how you can grow? Oracle for Startups provides stable, scalable cloud infrastructure with multi-cloud flexibility, so you can build your technology any way you choose. And at 70% off for 2 years, there's nothing holding you back. Grow your way with cloud that won't lock you in. Check it out at www.oracle.com/go-to/netrocks.
And we're back. It's .NET Rocks. I'm Richard Campbell. That's Carl Franklin. And we're talking to our friend Paul Stovall about, I guess, the next decade of Octopus Deploy. So 10 years in, brought in a partner. It sounds like you made a business plan together as part of this agreement.
Yeah, sort of. I think the as part of taking them on, we thought a lot about our growth and the path that we wanted to go on and whether that would make sense to them. So, the economics that go into, is this a good investment for any investor? There's a particular type of growth model that they're looking for, and we have that. And we'd be disappointed if we didn't maintain that as well, right? Because it would mean we've probably, so far, our customers have given us permission to stay in business and think that we make something valuable. If that growth was to slow down, it's probably because we've dropped the ball somewhere. So we'd be disappointed in that too.
Right.
And so the business model and the plans and the strategy and all of those things, obviously Insider on the board now, so we'll talk to them about them and run those things through. But it's the same plans we would have had regardless. It's all the same milestones. It's all the same sort of growth metrics and all of those things.
You don't see them bringing new metrics to the table. I mean, they do offer a certain level of sophistications in areas of your company that are probably not as sophisticated.
They definitely do, especially when it comes to benchmarking, right? So as a sort of technical founder, you can spend a lot of time sort of scratching your head thinking, okay, we've got this kind of traffic, to our website, and so many people are signing up, and they're giving us feedback about the product, and it seems to suggest they really like it. But how does that benchmark? And that's something that, because of Insight, because of the scale at which they operate, they have a lot of companies that we can benchmark against and say, this company is growing at a similar rate to you, but they have higher net promoter score or something. And so that's something we really want to work on.
This isn't.
So definitely the ability to benchmark things and kind of give a sense of these are the priorities. That has been quite helpful.
So.
Yeah, and it's interesting to just think about what are the things you want to do better. You've clearly talked about the sort of customer-facing pieces. Do you see the product line broadening?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to give you an idea, so the company's a bit north of 100 people. About a bit over half of that is the R&D team, so engineering, design, product. And then we've got a group of people who are our solutions team and sales engineering. And so if you're kicking off a DevOps automation project, these are a group of people who really just understand how to use Octopus, how to integrate it with Azure DevOps or TeamCity or GitHub Actions, and they can walk you through how to do all of that. So it's sort of in-house consultants for customers to help get started. And then we have a sales team, and those are split between North America and the UK. But one of the, as we were sort of planning the year and our hiring plan and stuff, we had the conversation of like, do we need to hire more people in sales? And the answer is generally no. Like, we like having a small sales team and a larger product team because we make a product better, and that makes it easier to sell. If the product does what customers are asking for it to do, it's so much easier to be a salesperson.
Sure. But it does come down to other markets too. I mean, you're hitting some obvious markets. The question is, can you broaden that market space? And that generally needs other sales forces. If you were going to make a big move into, say, South America, where there's some very interesting development going on, well, ta-da! You don't need English-speaking salespeople anymore. Right? That's a different cadre entirely.
Yeah. On the product side, I think on Runners Radio, you talked to Michael Richardson recently about the stuff we've been doing around runbooks, and we realized that a while back that customers were using Octopus not just to automate deployments, but to automate all the other ops activities that kind of happen around keeping software running. And we would go and see customers using this and kind of using our deployment functionality to automate these other types of things that weren't deployments, and realized there's something really powerful about saying, hey, we're trying to do DevOps within our organization, right? We've got the developers, we've got the ops folks, they're working together. Maybe we've got someone kind of wearing multiple hats. And yet at the end of the DevOps, kickoff meeting, they all go back to their desks or their homes, and they bring up two totally separate tooling stacks that they're using to automate stuff in the same environments. And these customers were using Octopus to do that in one place, and that was really powerful. And so we built a bunch of functionality, particularly around that, to make it more seamless and to work better. So I think there's a lot of areas for exploration, because I think a lot of what we think about as continuous delivery and how we deploy software kind of came out of, well, we've got a CI server that knows how to automate a build. Let's just kind of make that do some deployment stuff. And what Octopus has been doing is kind of just really taking the deployment part and thinking, this is actually a much more complicated problem than CI is, and certainly much more complicated than can be handled in one tool. Let's go really deep on it, and let's really try and make this easy. Let's try and make it support really complicated types of deployments and try to do it really, really well. So exploring into the operations space has been an area we've spent a lot of time. The GitOps side of things is something we're spending a lot of time in at the moment.
Yeah, and I think you're paying attention to AI ops as well, and ML ops. It's just like, what's interesting is thinking that automation of deployment of abilities inside of an organization is a good idea all around. That all companies are effectively software companies to some degree or another. And that pipeline to get whatever you're making internally to the folks that are going to make money with it is smart. Like, you've got to get better at automating that. It's not just one thing anymore.
Yeah.
So is that the new mantra then? Deploy all the things?
We've been doing that for a while. Yeah. Deploy and just automate all the things. If you've got to update SSL certificates on the web app that you deployed, that should be an automated thing. It should be something that either happens automatically or is something that gets kicked off.
We're definitely beyond 8 legs. Octopus.
That's right.
How do you say 20-legged puss?
Yeah, the dodecapus. Okay.
I wouldn't put it past you that you just nailed that.
I think I may have. Yes. The dodecahedron is the 20-sided die. So I think that dodecapus would be correct.
Okay.
I don't know. We all have our hobbies, friend.
Man.
I don't know what to tell you. I'm willing to try and solve that problem.
I'm going to register the domain now.
You're probably even beyond 20 destinations. Have you ever enumerated them? Do you have that number in your head?
We definitely support. So I think in terms of integrations and all the things we deploy to, it's definitely in the hundreds at this point. So perhaps more of a siphonophore kind of creature, but and I think that's one of the powerful things. If you take any single project, chances are you're probably deploying to a handful of things, right? You've got one project and it's a SQL Azure database and a SQL and an Azure website. And then you've got another project which is doing some stuff on Kubernetes. But at some point, as part of automating that pipeline, you've probably put a lot of thought into questions like, how do we control when production deployments happen? And how do we approve those things? And how does that meet our company's audit requirements, which are all very real concerns? And so having one tool that deploys all of those things really well is kind of the goal that we've set our sights on.
I'm just enjoying the fact that you casually dropped siphonophore into the conversation. Right? Like, I was being clever with the 20-legged octopus, and he dropped an aggregate creature from the deep sea, just sort of casually.
We've got 3 kids. They watch a lot of Octonauts.
So siphonophore is on the tip of your tongue. It's you relate to that.
For those who haven't seen it, what is it?
So it's like this. My understanding is it's sort of a creature that's sort of made up of multiple creatures. So things that
the nectophores.
Yeah, things that kind of look like sponges and jellyfish and so on, and then they all kind of join together, and then they specialize. Like one creature kind of is good at catching food, another is good at digesting it, and so this whole organism is sort of a colony, if you like, of independent creatures that all kind of rely on each other.
Wow!
But deep sea stuff. The ocean is weird.
Right.
You get down, you start seeing some of these critters that just emerge from the ocean. They're astonishing. But I'm just still amused at siphonophore as a business practice. It's like, how I want to organize my company. Because it's not actually a bad description of the business either, where you bring together smart people and let them specialize in the thing they're extraordinary at. You usually have a lot of success. There's a book in there somewhere, Paul. I'm sure there is. But I do appreciate this idea that you've helped make the DevOps revolution work, starting with the automation around deployment software, but more and more, and there's certainly relating that conversation I had on Runaz about runbooks and those things. Just this idea that as a product or a tool or an idea gestates, that there's automation to validate it and to move it through the various stages that get it out into the field for people to work with. It doesn't matter what it is ultimately. That's all good ideas. You could apply that to documents and spreadsheets as easily as you could to code.
Yeah, I think that's true. If you go back when Agile was becoming a thing and Scrum was becoming a thing, there was this real focus on, we want to not spend 12 months building some software just to get feedback on it. We want to do that quickly. But the way a lot of those projects would manifest back when we were doing consulting was that you would have a team, an engineering team that was kind of doing Agile or doing Scrum, but at the end of every 2-week iteration, they weren't able to actually deliver anything to production and get real customer feedback, right? At best, it was going to a business analyst or something, or a product owner.
Well, and you get the Conway's Law effect, right? That however you are organized, everything you make is going to look like the organization. If there's 3 teams that work on the thing, there will be 3 feature sets. Like, it's that kind of side effect.
Yeah.
Sorry, I totally derailed you on that, admittedly, but it is, part of that. How do we build an organization and tooling around that organization that can respond to the diversity of customer needs?
Yeah, I think so. When we started, that was the thing we were trying to solve. Was at the time setting up CI and source control was a really easy problem, but actually getting the stuff deployed, which is really important because that's when you get feedback. That's when you can actually iterate, take the feedback and iterate on it and make the product better and better. That's the problem that we set out to solve. But I mean, this announcement is funny, right? Because you spend a long time building a business and there's sort of no real attention in some ways, just let's take general media. And then you raise a round of funding and suddenly you're on the front page of newspapers, right? And everyone kind of wants to hear
everywhere, yeah,
the story. It's a really big deal. And it's sort of like, this is just one small step in all the things we've done building a valuable business. And to be super clear, a lot of the focus has been on sort of how the company started, but actually Insight didn't invest in 2014 when it was a couple of people. They invested now in Octopus is 100 plus people, 100 really smart people who, like that siphonophore, are all coming to work and all doing the best work of their lives, hopefully, really thinking through, really understanding our customers, what complex deployments look like, how can we help, how can we make the product better, constantly. That's the engine that Insight invested in.
I mean, this is a weird question, maybe. I mean, you're an Australian company, an Australian success story, but you took investment from what I think is as an American company. Is that an issue? Were there some Australian investors like a little bent out of shape on this? Why not use an American investment company?
Funny enough, there was a few stories that sort of ran as this was a wake up call to Australian venture capital and so on. I don't look at it that way. So I think if we said, hey, we've got a business model that requires a ton of capital because we're going, our next product is going to be octopuses on rocket ships or something, and that's a really capital intensive business, and therefore we need to raise a lot of capital. Then of course, you'd go and tap local Australian VCs, you'd go and tap overseas venture capital, you'd kind of raise that capital anywhere because the goal you're looking for is capital. That's not what we were looking for. So if we look across the Australian venture community, there's a lot of really great VCs and they probably know how to build and scale a business generically, but do they understand DevOps to the way that Insight does? So one of Insight's, if you take a couple of their companies, SonarSource is one, and JFrog is another. And those are really similar in space. If you understand how those businesses work, you can probably add a lot of value to a business like Octopus as well.
Sure. And you appreciate the success that those companies have had as well.
Yeah.
You look at the path that Sonar and JFrog gone on and go, that's not a bad path. I wouldn't mind being over there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And so you really want to, you don't want to bring on an investor for capital. Well, at least in our case, you want to bring on an investor because they know something that you don't know, because they can add value in a way that is sort of from experience that you don't have. And so to bring on an investor who sits across both the Octopus board and the JFrog board, or is really tightly connected to the way JFrog is, encountering.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's one of it's a Japanese thing, the karetsu, this conglomerate of companies that have a trust between them, whether they work together or not, to share knowledge and support. That's a pretty powerful concept and certainly something well worth tapping.
You guys wrote a handbook on how to be a remote first company, right?
Yeah, it's actually
just published it.
Yeah, we did. It's at handbook.octopus.com, and it's actually it's our company handbook. So it's what we give to employees. So what we, when you apply for a job, you give the company your CV, right? You sum up your entire couple of decades of experience and all the things that make you into sort of a 3 or 4 page document that the company gets about you. But often you as the candidate don't have that same kind of insight into the company. And so making our handbook public was sort of our way of saying, here's our CV, here's how we think about your career at the company and compensation. Here's how we think about remote work, as far as where do you choose to work and things like that. Here's what the feedback culture looks like. So here's what leave policies look like. All those things. We just sort of figured we'd make it public, and people can, if they're considering applying for a role with us, either read it and say this company's totally for me, or say this company's not for me, and that's okay. But at least everyone's more informed.
It's also a nice roadmap for anybody who wants to follow in your footsteps with any kind of remote first company, building one from scratch.
Yeah, we've been a remote first company since we started, and I think as probably a lot of companies found when they sort of got forced to become remote, there's a lot of really good advantages. I think a lot of folks were kind of skeptical. People won't get things done. Yeah. People won't be productive, and they definitely are when they work from home. But I think it also, I think management at a company has to generally be a lot better, right? You can't rely on, hey, I saw Fred come in early in the morning and he left after me. He was still there when I left. Therefore, Fred's a good employee. Like that. That was never really great management in the office.
Or embezzling. We don't know which.
That was never great management to begin with, but it kind of is the thing that people would rely on.
But you could excuse it for a long time.
Yeah.
But it also begs the question around the pandemic in general, because you've always been a remote first company. So in some ways, I think you're probably a little more pandemic proof than most. How did the pandemic impact Octopus?
Not a lot. So from obviously events and things like that got cancelled. From day-to-day stuff, I don't think anyone really noticed a difference. Obviously, everyone's sort of personal experiences with the pandemic were quite different. But as far as the company goes, no major differences. The one thing that we missed is because we were remote, every year we would bring the whole team together in Brisbane for a week to really spend that time together.
Right.
And that is really crucial. Like, it's amazing how important that is as far as building people's camaraderie with each other. And so that's not something we've been able to do this year. And a lot of us who are here in Brisbane at the company, which is about half the company, would spend time in the office together, at least one day a week or something like that. And we weren't able to do that for short periods during the pandemic too. So it actually has got us opening a new office because the company's grown so much to be able to keep doing that. We sort of realized how much we enjoy being able to be in each other's company.
And has most of your hiring been in the Brisbane area? Like, how far afield do you go these days?
So the way that we think about it is research and development, the sort of product side of the business. The people working on that, there's a really high level of collaboration that's involved. And so we've tried to kind of keep that, like, remote is one thing, as you know, time zones is a hard thing, right? Like, if we were a remote company, but everyone's kind of within the same time zone, you can't really complain about much. Like, you don't get to see each other too much, but at least you've got 8 hours of really great overlap with each other. Right. But when you're a remote company with people in Australia and the UK and the US, like we are, and the time zone overlap is limited to a couple of hours a day, that's really hard.
For collaborative work especially, or somebody's living an odd schedule. Strange Loop, which is mostly a West Coast of Canada company, had a couple of folks on the East Coast, and they literally just worked they finished work at 8:00 their time because it just worked better for them.
There's people can make it work. As a company, it's quite hard to say, so I guess what we've tried to do is be quite deliberate in where we hire people for particular roles. So for example, our product team is centered within Australia, not just within Brisbane, although there's a lot of people in Brisbane, but also we hire folks in Sydney and Melbourne and Perth and Adelaide.
But there's multiple time zones in Australia, so you've got a spread there.
There is, but there's enough that you can collaborate with people as needed. So
for the majority of their workday.
So that's been centered here. And then, but when you think about support, the support team, we want, if you are a customer of Octopus and you send us an email with some hairy problem, we want you to get a response from someone who's really clever, really informed, understands the product really well, and can help you within 2 hours. We can't do that from Australia if it's a customer in the US, and so or the UK. And so what we've done with the support team is that team does span the US, the UK, and Australia to be able to provide that really high level of responsiveness, because it makes sense for that team. But the time zones are hard. Like, there's no getting around it.
Yeah. Well, China's even bigger than Australia, and they're only one time zone, although that's pretty weird.
My supervillain plan is, if I was a supervillain, would be to sort of figure out some way to relocate Australia, like just kind of drive the entire country right into the middle of the Atlantic, just to get great time zone overlap on both sides.
Both North America and Europe, right?
Get enough towboats, you might
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would argue there is an island like that. It's called Iceland. It's a teeny bit smaller,
a little colder,
and not quite as many kangaroos.
Yeah. Excellent.
And far more volcanoes than Australia. Far more.
This is
wow.
Yeah, good stuff, Paul.
Yeah, amazing story, friend. I mean, what about acquisitions? That's one of the things that happens when finances get like this, and you've got money to put to work. Essentially, that's a way to accelerate things.
Yeah, no firm plans or anything around that. It's not something we'd necessarily be against, but we do think. I think it was common, a decade or so ago, for a large company to have a lot of different products. I don't think that's so common these days. I think what tends to happen is the product just becomes more powerful over time, and so we're kind of finding ways to kind of add new features and new capabilities to the product, but it's still kind of one tool, and there's a lot of value in that. I've set up my environments in one place, and so I can do a lot of different things with that information, rather than sort of adding other products. And that becomes quite hard through acquisitions. I think it's hard to sort of acquire something that's written in one programming language and then sort of try to figure out how to bolt it into an existing product. Yeah.
Right.
Well, and although there's occasionally a great team that you want, and bringing their product along makes sense, whether or not, how it ultimately fits into the overall stack's another question entirely. There are lots of different kinds of acquisitions.
That's right.
It's a tricky thing to think about too, in terms of, especially for an organization who's so deliberate about its culture, as to how you add people from another culture to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, Paul, we wish you the best of luck, of course. And it's really great news, and congratulations and all that. And maybe you come back in a year or so and tell us what you've spent it on. Or how much of it you spent. Nothing what.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, gentlemen.
All right. We'll see you, Paul. Thank you. And thanks for listening. And we'll see you next time on .NET Rocks. .NET Rocks is brought to you by Franklin's Net and produced by Plop Studios, a full-service audio, video, and post-production facility located physically in New London, Connecticut, and of course in the cloud. Online at pwop.com. Visit our website at dotnetrocks.com for RSS feeds, downloads, mobile apps, comments, and access to the full archives going back to show number 1, recorded in September 2002. And make sure you check out our sponsors. They keep us in business. Now go write some code. See you next time.
Why is there...
Welcome back to .NET Rocks. This is Carl Franklin.
And this is Richard Campbell.
And we are in our respective spots in the world.
Yeah, in our respective corners of the land of, gradual vaccination.
Yeah.
The end of all this.
We just recorded last week's show. What was it, yesterday?
Mm-hmm.
So nothing really has happened all that much in the meantime.
The old dog has been having seizures, as I think I've told you. Well, yeah. We got him on new meds at the beginning of the year, and so we went 14 weeks without a seizure. And that's administering medicine to him every 8 hours.
Wow, which is
a thing. Once you're maintaining a chart for your dog, but it's sort of the deal, right? He's 16 years old. And so, but there's this particular medicine, it's called Keppra for anybody who cares, does have an efficacy fall off after about 3 to 4 months. And so we're in that catchment now. So now he's starting to have seizures again, although they've been a little more mild. And so we're trying to figure out what to do next.
He's an old dog.
He is an old dog. This is all a one-way path, and he can't do stairs anymore.
Yeah,
he'll go down them, but he can't come up them. So the reality, of course, is that I carry my dog 3 or 4 times a day now. Every time he wants to go upstairs or something. So
yeah,
I'm grateful for being home through this.
Right.
You think about what our lives are like in the before times. I have to wonder if at some point she who must be obeyed wouldn't have said, like, you need to come home and take care of your dog. But the good news is I've been here and we've been able to do all this. So I don't know how much longer you get.
I don't know how to make these spaces.
This is because, his body's still functioning pretty well. His brain is shorting out.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the deal. So
does he have any more interest in bears?
He would if he could see them. And I should show you this great video clip because his eyesight's very limited and so forth. And there was a squirrel on the deck. Now you have to understand how great an offense we're actually talking about.
It's pretty big.
Like, for many, many years, there were not squirrels within 100 yards.
Yeah,
they were terrified. Right. This is an insane little creature that lives with me. Right. So this squirrel.
Hey, Carl here. There's something new from our friends at Text Control. TXTs,
that we can see being built,
right.
piece at a time. So that's why I'm doing it.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I like it.
The .netshow.com. Learn it, love it.
Nice.
Who's talking to us, my friend?
Grabbed a comment off of show 1663, which is one we did with one Kendra Havens. Maybe you heard of her.
Oh, yeah.
Talking about Visual Studio 2019 productivity, published back in November of 2019. And I picked it from this show because my alternative choice, because the only one of our guests has been on the show before, is Anthony. But that was back in 2008 for episode 405. And that's just like a little bit too long ago.
I was a teenager back then.
That's a long time ago. So, but VS 2019 productivity, clearly Kendra's ballywick too, right? She knows, she dug deeply into that space. And Wayne Hiller has this comment. It's from about a year ago. So it's an excellent show as always. I love listening to Kendra. The timing of the show was great because just the next week, I decided to enable code analyzers.
Nice.
Using FX Cop as well as the null reference type in my solution with 218 projects in it. I was amazed the number of warnings could actually go that high. I love the ability to change severity and suppress errors from the IDE. I do have one Core 3.0 project, and this is back in 2019,
I don't know
that causes the IDE to throw an exception when changing the severity from the IDE. All in all, I love it, though. Applying all those suggestions can only make me a better developer in the long run. So thank you, Kendra, for being so passionate about the tools I use every day. You and the team are making my life better with every release.
That's a really good tip on how to get rid of bugs in your application. Just suppress the errors.
That's it. If you turn the knob down, if the error doesn't get raised, it doesn't really exist.
It doesn't really count. Yeah.
That's the important part. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, Wayne, thank you so much for your comment. A copy of Music to Code By is on its way to you. And if you'd like a copy of Music to Code By, write a comment on the website at .netrocks.com or on the social medias. We publish every show to Facebook. And if you comment there and we read on the show, we'll send you a copy of Music to Code By.
And definitely follow us on Twitter. I'm at Carl Franklin. He's at Rich Campbell. Send us a tweet and use the -S for suppress the errors.
Get a lot of errors in your tweets there, do you?
Yeah, all the time. All the time. I'm always getting errors. Because I don't learn the syntax.
Like that's what IntelliSense is for. I don't need to know the syntax. I just keep typing till the squiggles go away.
Exactly. All right. Now let us introduce our guest. Anthony Cangelosi is a principal group PM of Visual Studio Core at Microsoft and a .NET Rocks former guest. Simon Calvert is a director of program management and developer division at Microsoft and considers himself lucky to have some great teams that work across the Visual Studio platform, visualstudio.com, and subscriptions, and specifically developer services. Andy Sterling is also here. He's a dev tools product person currently working on the debugger and diagnostic tools in Visual Studio at Microsoft. The perfect group of people to tell us all about Visual Studio 2022. Welcome, everybody.
Okay, a remarkably quiet bunch. This might be a short show.
It's probably my fault.
It's my fault because as a host, you should never say welcome everybody because then not everybody knows when to respond. So one at a time. Welcome, Andy.
It's great to be here.
Welcome, Anthony.
Thanks for having me.
Again. And welcome, Simon.
Yeah, excited to be here.
Excellent. We're all here. Welcome, Richard.
Glad to be here too, friend. Yeah, I appreciate Anthony. It was a long time ago that you were last on the show, episode 405, and this is what, 1739. So, 1,300 shows ago. But you were with Rico Mariani at the time. The two of you came on to talk about Visual Studio extensibility.
Are you going to tell
in
the story?
2008 time frame. And I think Rico's no longer with the company, actually. He's moved on. Although, wait, did I see he works for Facebook now? I don't even know what to say about that.
He has moved on. Yeah, I do remember that was an interesting time. Rico was a great person to work with. I've learned a lot from him. I just want to say up front that we're not doing 64-bit despite Rico.
Because it was the first thing I thought of when I saw the blog post about 64-bit. It's like, didn't we ask Rico Mariani about that like a million years ago? And he was pretty adamant that it wasn't going to buy us anything.
Yeah.
I think that was the show that had me really realize that we mythologize 64-bit. That somehow if you make something 64-bit, everything will be good. And in reality, it does really nothing changes, right? You just have access to more memory, which may or may not help anything.
There are certainly some things that get better, and there are a new set of problems that you have to introduce and deal with. And Rico certainly realized that early on. And he had some really interesting points that certainly drove our perspective for a long time, and have added a great deal of value in terms of moving more of our operations out of process, which gave us more freedom to parallelize. But there's only so much you can do before you have to really free up Visual Studio itself to give it more room in memory. And I don't know, Andy, you've really been driving a lot of the charge today in terms of that perspective. If anything, I've been a little too biased by Rico in the past. What do you think about our changes today?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first point is, back when you last talked about that was 2008, and we're a long way from there now. And so the same things aren't necessarily true in terms of,
if you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, now memory is so much more available. Like, like you said, it's not a magic bullet. Yeah. Like, it's not going to solve everything. And the question to hey, is it going to make VS faster? The answer is it depends. And it really does depend on what customers are doing, but it certainly allows customers with take more advantage of their hardware. And it is 2021 now, and there's a lot of workloads that can benefit from having that extra capacity to use, that extra memory to use.
It doesn't mean you should not use Dispose, and you shouldn't worry about memory leaks. I mean, granted, the conversation around Dispose and all that stuff went silent after 64-bit. I remember that exclusively. But that doesn't mean that you still have to allow memory leaks just because your system can now absorb them probably easier.
It doesn't mean I'm making 64-bit apps either, right? I'm still clearly, my experience, especially in the web app world and things like that, there's just no reason to compile a 64-bit. You tend to compile as 32-bit.
Unless you need that memory.
Yeah, I mean, we're not changing anything about how customers can build apps or type of apps they can build. Like Visual Studio has always supported building app types and app, like for example, we support ARM as a target platform. You can remotely debug and target ARM, and things like that. So it's no reflection on what your apps are capable of in Visual Studio. And as you mentioned, each app has to make its own decision. Whatever's best for it, and it's hard to say. There's no simple rule that says hey, 64-bit is always for the win. It's not going to be. It depends upon what you're doing.
Sure. All we know for sure is compile any is a mistake.
I won't go that far, but
wait a minute, is it? Why is it? Why is any CPU a mistake?
Yeah, my experience, compile any was great as long as you were always running on 32-bit machines. Because as soon as you tried to run on a 64-bit machine, it crashed. Because the chances that you had your 64-bit driver set up correctly and it actually tested the app properly,
that's
running on the
problem,
other components.
I think.
Yeah, it is.
I don't think that problem exists anymore.
But I don't think we tend to do that anymore either.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully you're testing your app in 64-bit. I'm certainly on 64-bit OSs since they don't make 32-bit Windows client OSs anymore.
Right. I guess that's another aspect of this, is just a lot of stuff is 64-bit. Office is 64-bit. So why wouldn't we be?
Because everybody needs a 50 megabyte, gigabyte Word doc. Everybody. We got to embed all our PowerPoints in there.
All our 4K images and videos. Oh, yeah.
Got to put that 32
That's what
gigs
we
of
need.
RAM to good use.
Yeah.
That's right.
How did you guys know what I do?
This is Simon's job, is really big PowerPoint text.
The more videos, the better.
Okay. I think running lots and lots of 32-bit applications in 64-bit Windows is really the way that most people work, right? There aren't a whole lot of cases in the software that I run, except for maybe, the Adobe Suite, Premiere, and, stuff that works with big files where I need all that 64-bit stuff. So why does Visual Studio...
Person observing my stream, I need your feedback. What else could be a rental? I got portable phone chargers, music boxes, hookah. I know. Umbrellas. Beach. Umbrella. Oh man, that's expensive, dude. I didn't know umbrellas were that expensive. Okay, that stuff is gay. Is it? I mean, they don't look like they cover. I didn't know umbrellas were that expensive. Holy crap. I did not know they were that expensive. That's pretty big. Oh, it tilts. Okay. Well, that's cool. That's cool. That's cool. How about that? I prefer buying everything through Amazon, though. I'm not a fan of. I don't understand the purpose of these flaps. And why is there such a huge price difference between $36 ones? Man, why is there such a huge price difference? Is it because how high it sits? Like this. And you're still not helping me. Okay, it's okay. That's an interesting concept. How far do they go? It's just 9 feet, right? But that's 9 feet high. I mean, I'll buy one. I just want to make sure I get the right one. Is this what I just looked at? I actually like this. Mm, mm. Let's play this. I like it. I like it. Oh shoot, is it tall enough? That's the question. These are normal people. I'm tall. Would that still work? 8-foot umbrella canopy, oversized umbrella, heavy duty. There are some competing products. Looks too complicated. Okay. I don't know. I mean, I get it. It just kind of looks like work. Is there anything simpler? I mean, I only clicked this because it had a pretty girl on it. It's too complicated, man. I need something that you could just throw in the air and it self-assembles. Yeah, it's too complicated, dude. Like, could I rent it out? Yeah, it's just... I don't know, man. It looks complicated. But I already looked at this one. Okay, yeah, we get it. Just happy family. Yeah, I already saw that one. What's this? I don't know. Something I keep going back to this. It just looks complicated. Yeah, it looks complicated. Go back to my umbrellas. It has to be simple, man. This might work. Look at the reviews. Oh, shoot. You know what I need to do? I need to get. I got it. I'll get these umbrellas. But I need to get my business decal on the umbrella. That's the advertising right there. That's the way it's going to work, baby. I got it. I got it. That's my advertising. I just figured it out. Why am I so smart? So the way that this can work, that's my advertising. The way that this can work is if they purchase, one is they can rent out an umbrella. Two is they can they can purchase a certain amount of product and they'll get a complimentary umbrella. But that umbrella will still do the advertising for me. That works. That is what I needed. That is what I needed. All right. So if we go to Alibaba. Let me call Ramos.
Scott, it's too early, man.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just figured it out. My marketing. It'll be really fast, man.
Yeah.
I purchased umbrellas from Alibaba, and I have my logo decals on it for Beach Mobile.
Mm-hmm.
And I rent out the umbrellas, or if they spend enough money on other stuff, they get the complimentary umbrellas for the beach, and it advertises itself. The app.
Well, how do you get umbrellas on the beach?
They're umbrellas. They're beach umbrellas. What do you mean?
No, you have to have permits to go out there and have a station with umbrellas, right?
No. You deliver the umbrellas. You throw the umbrella in the bag, you strap it onto your back, and you deliver it.
No, what I mean is, okay, so you're saying they're still gonna use Instagram. They're still gonna, however, they're gonna get to your site. The umbrellas would be part of the deal, right?
I can still have a campaign on Instagram, yes. But what I'm saying is the umbrellas that I rent out or I provide complimentary, if they spend enough money on other stuff, has my advertising on it. So people already see the app the app logo on the umbrella.
Yeah.
And it's stationary and it advertises itself.
Got it. Well, here's what I think. I mean, I think you have good ideas, Scott, and I think there is use for it, and there's no doubt. So when I'm at the beach, and especially if I'm on vacation and I'm not a local, people want to be pampered. They want to be catered to. They don't have umbrellas that they bring, so that all that makes sense, right? The only thing, and again, this is just my feedback. The only thing that I didn't understand is why would you buy expensive boom boxes when I'm telling you, people at the beach, yeah, they may want to hear music, but they don't necessarily want a $500 boom box. You know, that I didn't understand. But again, it's up to you, Scott. So I think your ideas are good. I just think that like you even told me, you got so much going through your head. It's crazy. I know your head is exploding with stuff. The other thing is, I did take a look the other day at your pitch deck, okay, or your slide deck, and I had asked, is that for a partner or for an investor? You mentioned a partner.
No, it's for a partner.
Okay, it's for a partner. Fine, but still think of your partner as an investor. And my opinion is that it's still all very scattered because you put things like snow plowing and other stuff, and it's like, wait a second, are you doing beach stuff or are you doing snow plowing? You know?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. It's like I get it. I get it that you have your thing is about the technology that can enable all these services, concierge services at your door, right? But I think what you're doing now makes sense because you're more focused. You're just like, okay, forget snow plows, forget laundry delivery service, forget the idea that I told you about the pool and restaurants, and maybe even forget about restaurants only. So I think it's good that you're narrowing it down to, let me cater to people. Let me solve this problem. People who go to the beach and they go empty-handed. They may bring a soda with them, but they don't have umbrellas. They didn't bring music. Their phones are about to run out of battery because, like you say, they're on their Instagram all the time. That makes sense. Okay, so solve that problem. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good idea.
The advertising on the umbrellas to loan out solves my problem. I don't have to rent out a boat with a huge screen on it.
Yes, exactly.
I don't have to have.
That was insane, Scott. Man, you're freaking nuts to think that you should rent a boat or buy an expensive motorbike, $6,000 or whatever. Come on, Scott. Just like do the simplest thing to make you money, and that is solve a need. Yes, and frankly, again, if I'm on the beach and somebody comes to me, or I go on Instagram, there's an ad that says, "Hey, we can deliver an umbrella for cheaper than what you can rent it now," because I believe those umbrellas at the beach are minimum $10, right? Is that correct?
I thought they were like 20.
Exactly, minimum 10, maybe $20. And then you have a music box. And I already told you, why buy such an expensive music box? Because think about it. Are you going to allow someone to rent a music box that costs you $500 and they only put a $200 deposit? I don't know about you, man, but what if someone says, "Who is this guy?" I'm just going to take their money. I'm just going to take the box. I'm not going to return it.
No, they don't have to return it. I'll just bill them because I'm allocating. I have the power with Stripe integration to hold whatever amount of money I want to. I'll go ahead and provide a disclaimer before they commit to doing the rental through the app, and they see the disclaimers or everything.
Right.
But if they want to take it, then I profit from that too. It doesn't matter. I'll put a hold on their card.
Scott, because if I rent something, are you going to put a $500 hold on a music box?
Yeah.
I'm going to say no. I don't want a $500 hold. Are you kidding me? What if someone steals it? Right?
Okay, but the thing is how is someone going to steal it? Like, I mean, that's not if they want to bump music and have hoes and whatever, then they'll do it.
That's not the point, Scott. The point I'm trying to make is that don't put out such an expensive product at it initially. Like I told you, JBL and you got like a dozen of these companies that have very good music boxes, those portable music boxes, Bluetooth, for $200 max. Anyway, that's besides the point.
I hear you.
The point is that I think you have a good idea, and I think that it's not going to take a lot for you to test it. So yeah, I would get all that pizza stuff out. I can't really see that. Yeah, I get Denny's and Domino's out. Get all that stuff out, Scott, because logistically, it's going to be difficult. So what I would do, again, I would go to a key location on the beach where, just in case you don't have anything that you list, that you can go out and buy, right? Now, you said you're going to order some hookahs, right? You're going to order that?
Hookers? No.
Hookahs.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would stick to that, man. I would stick to chargers, music, hookahs, maybe some snacks.
I gotta apply for a tobacco license. I was binge watching YouTube videos yesterday. It seems pretty.
But that's cool, but all that stuff is getting in your way from moving forward. Add tobacco licensing later. Yeah, I wouldn't do tobacco licensing now. Just do like easy stuff, like you say, umbrellas, hookahs, music, chargers, snacks. I wouldn't even do Denny's integration, Domino's integration, because then that means, what, are you gonna go pick up the pizza from Domino's yourself? Is it? Scott, I got an important call, man.
All right, see you. Bye.
All right, I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Maybe I should have told him he was being recorded. Anyways. If they buy enough, I'll deliver it. Right. Or I just have to work with specific small restaurants, and they'll handle it. Right. So, okay, now what? Back to the umbrellas. I gotta go to Alibaba. And I'm about to hop off. I gotta go. See ya. Oh shoot. Hey, Altitude. Oh, you heard my kid. Yeah, when he's up, then bad things happen if I don't tend to him. So the thought process is get an umbrella and then get a logo for my business so that it advertises itself. So this will say, instead of Heineke or whatever, it'll say, beach delivery app. And it just advertises itself. And I think that's the simplest way of marketing. So as people come on the beach, they see it. I'm surprised it took me this long to figure it out. So yeah, I got to take a break, and then I got to try to research suppliers that are willing to put logos on there, which means I got to get a logo too. I'll figure it out. All right, I got to go. See ya.